And we're going to start the day with a keynote on the topic of internet freedom and censorship. And when Micah and I were thinking of potential speakers to invite, we couldn't think of a person who has done more to advance the science and cause of internet freedom and censorship in the last few years than today's keynote speaker. Professor Roya Ensafi is an associate professor of computer science and engineering at the University of Michigan. Her research focuses on internet security and privacy with the goal of creating techniques and systems to better protect users online. She is particularly passionate about online censorship, geo-discrimination, surveillance, and related threats to internet freedom. She has won numerous awards and distinctions for her research. She is a recipient of the Sloan Fellowship, NSF Career Award, Google Faculty Research Awards, multiple IARTF, Applied Networking Research Prizes, fellowships, and on and on. I'll not bother listing all of them. She's a founder of Censored Planet, a global censorship observatory. She has studied Russia's throttling of Twitter, HTTPS interception in Kazakhstan, and China's Great Cannon attack, amongst many other instances of network interference. Please join me in giving a warm round of welcome to Professor Roya Ensafi.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I have to say thanks to Zubair and the chairs for inviting me to this, to PETS. I have to say I have an infant and a toddler, so it takes a village to be able to put a talk, ambitious talk, ground up together. So before I start, I have to say thank you to my team for their generous help with the talk, my friends and collaborators, most of them are sitting in this room, and my love and my husband for making it happen. Let's, how they made this always the case. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay. Oh no, it doesn't work as a whole. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. In the past years, we have seen an alarming rate of government using internet censorship and shutdown to oppress their activists and dissident, to silent protest and gain political control. Access Now, one of the advocacy group, recorded a 41% increase from the last year's the rates of the shutdown. The intensity and the frequency of censorship is increasing fast. And we're not talking anymore about Great Firewall, China, and a couple of countries. We're talking about the global effect of this. I want you guys to imagine how isolating and hopeless one can be when they lose a loved one in a protest and they cannot even get connected to internet to upload the pictures to hope for justice. Democracy dies in such darkness. Over the past years, to defend for global democracy, I have founded Censored Planet Lab, which its goal is to be able to bring harmful practices and technologies that hurt internet freedom to justice. In this talk, I want to share about some of our experience and the studies we have done and key lessons that we learned, and point to some of the problems that need your expertise to engage on. Where all started. When Arab Spring happened in 2011, anti-censorship community noticed that they have to get serious about collecting censorship data around the political events. At the time, we have technologies, we have efforts like case studies here and there, but thanks to efforts by Open Observatory of Network Interference, UNI, we become a lot more serious in building observatory that collect data over time. One way is, for example, send software or develop a software or instruments to the users in different regions, and then those users basically collect the data and send them to UNI servers so that then researchers can have the data and report on the events happening. The other way, or another way, is basically remotely collecting the censorship measurement data. This is the approach that Professor Kurandel and I pioneered years ago, which was all about using subtle properties of the protocol already installed on routers, DNS resolvers, and so infrastructure of the network that is already operating in the network to be able to learn whether two hosts can talk to each other without any volunteers' participation. Over the past years, we have came up with 7 or 8 such side channels that are vetted and reviewed by the community, published in top-tier conferences, and can help us to be able to keep track of most common ways that the government performs censorship, like DNS poisoning, IP blocking, keyword and SNI blocking, and so on. But the key things was when we developed those techniques and evaluated them, those were more pointing to disruption. Between 2 points, something is not working, and not necessarily representing censorship. In another way, putting it is from research work that we did and published to actually that data become useful to activists and journalists to be able to report on the events. There was a lot needs to be done. And even, to be honest, performing those techniques was very labor intensive and required a lot of engineering effort to make those techniques robust and make them to be able to run continuously and over a space for a long time. So 8 years ago, we had this big question put in front of us. Keep publishing those papers, business as usual, or and delegate the implementation and deployment to civil society to do the last leg of the work to get the impact, or actually take a risk. And among all the things an assistant professor has to do, we also add observatory efforts, building an observatory effort, which its job would be orchestrating, running these measurement techniques in parallel, try to build statistical means and techniques to be able to distill censorship from the data collected, and more importantly, go out and disseminate and facilitate data use. My team, especially the lead PhD student, Sandra Roman and I, with the help of software engineers and amazing teammates, we decided to take that risk. And from 2018, we have been performing and running, orchestrating the run of these systems and collected data on different layers of disruption that's happening in different layers of network connectivity. More importantly, even when the data was there, we realized soon that the data itself is very hard to interpret. And for anybody that doesn't have networking expertise, that can be causing misleading, that can cause error or false positives in interpreting the data. So we joined force with Jigsaw, Google Jigsaw, and we basically hijacked one of their engineers and one of their program managers to join our efforts to build the dashboard with us and make this dashboard free of use for anybody who wanted to play with the data or use the data. Looking back, doing the last leg of the work, from pushing the research to practice, was very fun and very satisfactory. It had a load, it added a load, it was tough at times, but I won't change it for any, and the same as my students. One of the key side benefits of this was we ended up building tools that they were ready and they were robust and gave us unique opportunity to jump on rapid responses. When we were called to investigate and help with local activists to understand what is happening in the region, we had tools. Because you have a short period of time, a week. You cannot at the time build tools to be able to investigate what's going on. We already had those codes. Our students in our team already knew how to run, interpret the data quickly and create a report so journalists can report on those events on time. More importantly, we kept collecting this big data. I mean, it's not big as big data is, but this massive data about censorship event. And we had to get out of academic bubbles that we were in and go find people who are going to use this data. So we had to really overcome our personalities to be more social, to attend more events, conferences that we wouldn't go otherwise, and become familiar with what other problems are on the front people are needing to be solved. So it was so valuable. Over the course of years, Sense Planet has been engaged in bringing transparency and accountabilities to numerous new government censorship tactics. One of them, for example, was Kazakhstan man-in-the-middle. We were pinged, I think, honestly, Thursday or Friday, by researchers in that area that their governments are sending text messages to public, to their city or to the region, asking them to install a root certificate and add that to their browser, facilitating man-in-the-middle. The key question from them was, we know this is happening. How vast it is? Can you help us to bring that to international focus? So we work with locals. We use our remote measurements to show how many networks are infected, and wrote the reports and took it to Chrome and Mozilla. And Chrome and Mozilla immediately took an action and basically invalidate that root certificate and took a public stand against the harmful practice that Kazakhstan was pursuing. In short, these studies, these rapid response studies, aren't just to show complicated and new censorship tactics the governments are practicing or deploying. They are critical for security and privacy researchers to have an honest and true understanding of the new threat models that we have to establish. And engaging and doing this kind of studies does not happen overnight. You cannot just engage in rapid response. You have to build a trust in established secure connections beforehand, so that when this event happen, you can be part of the team that are studying these events on the ground. More importantly, I think civil society needs us to be able to be more proactive in helping and being engaged as a team player. Although we're getting better, like a community and acting like a community to understand what the censor is up to, we have seen that in the past years, censors have not standing still. In fact, the censorship and blocking is like a cancer. When one country successfully establishes its national firewall, it starts exporting it to the other countries. And soon we will see the end of open internet if we don't act. Case in point, Russia. So let me start by saying that in 2012, around the time after Arab Spring happened, Russia started to establish new laws. They called them, what was the name? Block registry law. That its goal was to be able to, basically, the reason behind the law was to protect kids and children from harmful internet. And the Roskomnadzor, which is a government agency in Russia responsible for communication and IT, was responsible to create a registry of the domains and IPs that would pass on to different ISPs. Let me say that the reason why Russia is important for us as a case study is till almost 2016-17, Russia was like other Western countries. It's a newcomer to this authoritarian, fully practicing censorship. Their infrastructure of the backbone network is very different from what China and Iran infrastructure look like, which is owned by operate by the government. In all in Russian network was and is owned and operated by commercial ISPs, hundreds of them. So when in 2012, Russia started establishing these laws and passing on domains and IPs that needed to be blocked, each of these ISPs interpreted the blocking on their own. So they had to figure out how to implement this blocking themselves. Some implemented it as a DNS poisoning, some used SNI blocking, and so on. And actually in 2017, when we jumped into a study, the list that was established in 2012 at 2017 had hundreds of domains and IPs in that list, and it was very poorly maintained. In this infrastructure, like the government established a law and policy, and the ISPs, commercial ISPs, implementing the censorship, there was one big problem. There were some ISPs that did a good job, so users were left have their domains and IPs being blocked. Some overblocked, so internet was really unusable. Some did do a minimum blocking so that they just kept the Russian government happy, and so on. And we did this study to show how different it is blocking from ISP to ISP. So that infrastructure was not enough to react to events. What Russian Roskomnadzor wanted is in real time, ask the ISPs to perform blocking of certain domains in a very effective way, and it wasn't happening. So in 2019, they established a new law. Putin specifically appointed Roskomnadzor to bring a stability, security, and integrity to Russia's internet. And Runet law was born. The law gave grounds for Roskomnadzor to push each of these ISPs to deploy a very special deep packet inspection device. So the government would facilitate a specific device that needed to be operated by the ISP. That device is called TSPU. And in 2000, I think, like around that time, ISPs received messages from the government about how their network looked like, network topology looked like, and devices started shipped to these networks. This document is a leaked document that one of the ISPs shared with activists that shows exactly what the tutorials that these ISPs received and where they wanted these devices to be installed. Moving forward, in 2021, Russian government asked Twitter to take down hundreds of tweets and users from Twitter. At first, Twitter opposed the idea. So Russian government started intentional slowing down Twitter connections. In another way, it started doing domain-specific throttling as a new way of censorship. It didn't take that long for Twitter to listen to Russian government and take down those tweets and Twitter accounts. Throttling as a means of censorship is a beast of itself, because it's very easy for a censor to deploy throttling. You just need to drop some packets. But from the user perspective, it's really hard to attribute that slowdown to the sensor. You might think that your connection is low, something is going on, but you don't blame that the sensor is doing it. More, censorship observatory have a hard time to be able to detect intentional throttling on a global scale. So it's still one of the most successful way of doing censorship if you want to stay on a radar and not be able to get detected. When we were doing this study, we realized a vast difference from the previous studies we have done. And that was the implementation of the throttling was very identical from ISP to ISP. Because previously, in their way of implementing, each ISP was responsible for their own way of doing blocking. So you could actually see variances. But throttling from ISP to ISP was very, very uniquely implemented. And to us, that was basically indication that the TSPU devices are actually in the network right now performing the throttling. Later in that year, even one of the parliament's members acknowledged that the throttling of Twitter was actually performed by TSPU. And my team and activists that we were working with for years, we looked around to see how much we know about these deep packet inspector devices. They're like a black box. And with Professor Criando's team, we started to go further and try to investigate what are these TSPU devices are doing, what their capabilities are, where in the network they are. But unfortunately, these devices would only activate if from inside residential network you would go to the block domains. So from outside, you couldn't just fuzzy test, pin test, I don't know, to be able to capture characteristics and features of those devices. We were lucky that we have a lot of good collaborators on the ground, so we had access to many residential networks. And in collaboration with them, following ethical principles, we actually developed some specific fingerprints based on the bug that was in their IP fragmentation implementation. And then using those kind of fingerprints from outside, we could remotely scan the whole Russia's network and see where those devices are. It turned out there are hundreds of these DPI devices are handed to the ISPs, are implemented in their networks. And most importantly, when we did a trace route of where in the network and how far from end IP addresses these devices are, we found a majority, 70% of these devices are 2 hop away, 2 visible hop away from end user. Actually, this red lines is basically where we captured where the TSPU is performing its blocking. These TSPU devices are in path. It means that they are very much capable to do many types of security and privacy attacks. They're 2 hop away from the user. It's not like Great Firewall of China that, like, basically, I mean, they do regional blocking, but in the simplest way, the traffic is going to the choke point, and then in there, all the user traffic is subject to some level of censorship. Here, it's 2 hop away. It means that if they decide to target a special dissident, an activist, and man in the middle of the traffic, they can. So targeted surveillance, happily. More importantly, if they decide to, the current architecture is that Roskomnadzor had a root access on these devices that are distributed in the networks. So if they decide that in these regions, I want to apply different level of censorship versus the other, they can. It's easy. It's its own national firewall, implemented by DPI, like commodity devices that are thousands of dollars. It's the cheapest way to can build very successfully build a national firewall. And rumors have it, and journalists have been warning about this for years, that these countries, these authoritarian countries, Russia and China, are actually trying to export this technology and the way that it works to other countries. It's feasible for any small country, let's say in Africa, South Asia, you name it, to be able to put $100,000 and try to build its own national firewall. Unfortunately, we need to do a lot more work to bring accountability to this and figure out which of these authoritarian countries are exporting their countries and how we can defeat them. In the recent year, like 2023 and now, activists in Russia have been warning us about new plan, which is Russian government is testing by disconnecting a special region's connection to the globe, to the outside international networks, and see whether the internal network works. One can think of is that they want to use shutdown, like internet shutdown, as a way of emergency response to political unrest. But also, what the Russian community warned us is that Russia is clearly working toward preparing for prolonged shutdowns if necessary. And we really need to revisit what technology we have at hand to be able to guarantee users in these regions to be able to have a sustainable connection to the global or free internet. It's not just Russian government Russian government policies and practices that are hurting internet users in Russia. International community often establish sanctions on countries in part because of their human rights violations. When it comes to internet freedom, this practice often backfires. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, of course, everyone expected that Russia is going to block free media, open independent media, increase its blocking and targeting circumvention tools. Surprising events that happened was many companies or private sector also started geo-blocking Russian users. And more, there were sanctions established in toward Russia and by US and its allies. One example of how sanction backfired is the HTTPS ecosystem. At the time sanction established, two certificate authorities started basically withdrawing their service from for Russian users. In another way, for example, they didn't issue certificate for .ru TLDs. And they specifically mentioned that this is due to their interpretation of the sanction. But what Russia did at that time was immediately building its domestic CA. And a certificate authority that itself, the Roskomnadzor, controls. Now, Russia has everything it needs to be able to intercept connection that's supposed to be end-to-end encrypted. Let me walk you through what I mean by that. So imagine now that they have a domestic CA, they can issue certificate on demand. At the time, they forced Yandex, which is the most popular and prominent browser in Russia. It's like Chrome for Russians. They forced Yandex to accept the Russian CA as a trusted root. So we have domestic CA, we have the browser that is already infected. And 2 hops away from the user, there is a TSPU device that can actually man in the middle in real time without user even noticing. There's no green lock on the browser that is going to be red. Going after measuring and investigating unintended and hurtful effect of sanction has been one of the research agenda that I have had. In the past years, my team and I wanted to investigate the embargo and sanction and its effect on internet freedom in sanctioned countries like Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, Syria, you name it. What I've noticed and learned that investigating these policies is harder than other censorship that I've done, because we not only needed IRB thinking about the ethics and managing the risks, but also we had to go to General Council of University. And more importantly, they referred us to go to OFAC, a government agency that is responsible for establishing this sanction. Because as a part of our study, we had to transfer a code, a survey question to the sanctioned user. And that could by itself be sanctioned. So a study of the sanction was harder in some sense. But we back and forth with OFAC and different parties, and we got a green light for studying sanctions effect on Cuba. And we believe that that study can be generalized for other countries. In the Cuba case, before we do our study, we also ran a small survey among the tech-savvy users of the Cuba to know whether they care about sanctions or do they differentiate between US government or like the results of a sanction by the server side is leading to their blocking or the government. And we learned quite a number of quotes from them. And links for domains and topics and software that they cared about, and they knew that this is not their government's blocking. Actually, this is done by a server side, and they wanted us to highlight them in a study and show them results. we targeted those domains that users requested, and they weren't just normal users, they were tech-savvy people who were active and has some connection to Internet freedom community. We combined these domains to around 10,000, and we did only focus on those domains that were blocked outside of the territory of Cuba, but also we could positively attribute them to the sanction rules, which was around 600 of them. And these domains were, majority of them actually, belong to the category of topics that are promoted by US government to be exempt. It means like educational resources, information tech. And I'm talking about like TikTok, the version of the, I forgot the name, but social network, One Social Network, Code Academy, Hola VPN, and so on. Among those that promoted to be exempt even, but still overblocking is happening, 44% of them have a free tier. It means that there's no financial transaction needed, and there's no reason to be blocked, honestly. And so everybody around the world have access to them except these regions. When we wanted to study this, we noticed that if we focus on 10,000, but if we wanted to extend this study, if civil society and researcher want to study this in a broader way, looking at the tail of the domains, more customized or more smaller services, this is too cumbersome to do. It means that even researchers cannot easily create a data-driven reports to take it to OFAC, and then OFAC issues some order to the companies and tell them that you guys are overblocking. Because there is no standard way of implementing them. And to do this study and correctly attribute this to sanction, you have to manually go through everything, which we did. So all in all, I hope our community get engaged more in this area, because we need to do more to inform the Western government or international community about this unintended and harmful effects of their practices more. I think we need to engage more to craft better targeted sanction that avoids users being hurt and target those governments to be punished. All I said, I want to emphasize that the anti-censorship community haven't sit still. We are one of the most vibrant and active community, and in the past years, I've seen a very much dedicated advancement in the tools and technologies that we have. And we are one of the best, friendliest community to be belong to. Today, I'm going to just highlight one of the recent studies that we have been doing and what quickly we learned, and I end with that. When I looked at how many, my team and I, when we looked at how many tools are being established in the recent years, how many events are happening, how much users' needs has been increasing in these many different regions, we realized that the anti-censorship ecosystem is very opaque. It's very adversarial, it's somewhat adversarial in nature, because to be able, if you're a regional expert and grassroots developer, you have to stay anonymous to be able to build your tools. And the connection between censored user and the researchers and the circumvention provider as a whole needs a little bit more work. We need to better understand each of these this stakeholder and their needs and challenges better. So we ended up performing a survey. We talked to 19 circumvention tool developers, most of them anonymous, but we knew about them or wants to stay anonymous. They are providing internet freedom to millions of users. These are not just random person we talk. These are prominent circumvention tool developers targeting mostly Russia and China. And we also got feedback or did a user-facing interviews with 24 users in those regions which we could ethically and safely ask questions from them. Our goal was to do this first study to see, okay, what are the priorities? What will we do? And we wanted to know how users find the convention tool. Is there a difference between how Russian or how Iranian, how Chinese? Is there regional and cultural differences? And more. Of course, this study didn't cover it all, so we're continuing to answer these questions. How do providers survive the attacks, targeted attacks towards them? When Chinese governments come after them and suddenly they get DOS, what they do? How do they deal with the risks associated to them? What this trust means for users and provider? And what can we do? Trust came up in our interviews because we sat with them 1 hour and kept coming up. Actually, it turns out there were many things we learned. One was these good providers kept warning us about misbehaving ones. There are some providers that are actually logging everything from the users they're giving internet to. Because if the government knock at the door, they can just pass in the logs and say that, okay, please don't arrest me, here is the users that use my services. When we talked to users, they said, I know they're not trustworthy, but I don't have choice. I have to use them. Bootstrapping keep coming. It's like, hey, dude, it's like one fail after another. And one of the, and we don't know, after one failed, we don't know how to fix it. It's too hard. So we use another tool. And a warning signal that we got from this limited number of trustworthy providers is that when the users, when they're targeted and they have to patch, it takes more than a month for the user to come back and trust them, because they think it doesn't work. So they are in a set of like going from one circumvention to another and then rotate back, basically. And then a warning call for funding agencies that they all mentioned that it's very hard to sustain the practice if we don't want to expose ourselves. Because if we want to monetize it and charge the users, then we have to give away some of our identities. And also in these regions, users don't have money anyway. And the problem with that is when there's a limited funding, and if they found a patch that works, it's better for them to write a grant and say that we were the only one at the time of unrest that our tool worked. That gives them upper hand. So that's caused sharing these things at the time of unrest a little bit harder for them. Okay, what can we do? Well, anti-censorship community, most of them are actually part of a FOCI workshop happening Monday before PETS, hopefully going forward forever, is there. They have been working on this for a long time. They put the groundwork. But this morning, I want to actually inspire you guys to engage with our community more. Join us to fight this anti-democratic, governments. Take time, understand more how the new capabilities of authoritarian governments and censors are evolving and metastasizing around the world. Believe me, if you read our community's research papers, where you can find them in censorship.nimity.ch, you will find lots of great research problem that needs your attention. Especially, we need to design better tools to rise to the challenge of evolving capabilities and threats. More importantly, I think you as a researchers can make a huge difference. Together, we can bring your ideas from research to practice and actually help users that are vulnerable and hopeless in many regions around the world. Remember, censorship is not anymore the problem of 1 or 2 countries. It is metastasizing. If we want to have a free and open internet, we need to act together and be together and join our community. With that, I'm open to question. Thank you. I blame the infant for all the slides didn't match with my talking, so forgive me for those. I think my student was like, "You're behind." Anyway.
Good morning.
Yes.
Zeki Erkin from Delft University of Technology. I'm Turkish myself, living in the Netherlands. I really respect your research. This is very fundamental. But I'm a little bit feeling dark because when you talk about internet freedom, are we free right now? Because we are, as a society, being manipulated by everything we see online. So Russians are creating their own network, maybe some other countries, maybe many more, including my hometown. But we are fighting for what? Because the information we provide to them, or anyone, is already biased. There are people thinking that the whole world is flat. And the correct information, what is the opposite of fake? Real news is already impossible to get here in this part of the world. So technological solutions we can provide, but the source is internet providers. They are trying to manipulate societies at large. So what do you think about that?
Well, you know, yes, we can be pessimistic about it and just stop fighting. Or we can just remember that this is hands on deck for everybody. We can be representing a better, more educated version of the news to the public. Everybody can play a role. You know, you're talking about how dark and media can manipulate you. I believe from childhood till now, we have to get engaged and let them know about what is free open internet means. What are the bias in news mean? User education is the key. And user education has to be regional and cultural. And what does that mean? It means that we have to engage with grassroots movement. We have to be, it's not a one-man job, or one company's job. It's everybody hands on deck. So my response to this is that no, I don't believe, and I don't want to lean on that idea that soon internet is going to be Russia's internet, Chinese internet. While the data is showing that dark picture, I think we have a long time to fight, and our community won't let that happen, or at least not on my watch. So let's not think like that. Let's just be very positive about it. Let's just go plea to everybody. Actually, most of the time I have made a change in the companies is when they heard my personal stories. And I went and played to the one engineer in that company and say, hey, this is happening, can you fix it? And then through back his scene, get things fixed. So I think every human being can make a difference. Actually, in this room and more security conferences that I go, there are students sitting that will be implementing this policy, will be part of, and so what we can do is educating them that when this happens, bring it to the picture, help us. But I won't bend to that thinking, and you shouldn't too. Yeah, I love that.
Hi, Roya. So, my question, or more like a comment and question, is that the thing I have always campaigned for is a predictable and reliable immigration path for the people that really need this kind of help to get out of their environment where they are subject to their government's threatened by their local government, and especially for the developer of many open source tools. It's really important for you to it's not like they can just being anonymous can delay arrest. It cannot prevent it, and especially when they are when they are anonymous, the people that support them don't know their identity when they are in danger. But when the identity is discovered by their government, you can just send national security police to there and to harass or try to even recruit them. So what is your comment on my campaign about predicting reliable and predictable immigration paths to the people that need help to create internet freedom?
I cannot echo it more. Until I get my green card fixed, I wouldn't even dare to say censorship word. My advisor, Jed, which is Jed Crandall in this room, without him, Roya wouldn't exist because he supported me. Actually, he wrote all the rec letters, just to make sure that I am well taken care of and can pursue my dream. But so yes, we need to support researchers, activists that are from regions that their government target them. The long-term plan would be immigration. I cannot say that much about it. But the short-term plan is when we have HCI researcher from a region that they don't want to be known, you still can make a difference. Just anonymously, let others senior in my community know that you want to work, but you don't want to be known. Believe me, when we write papers, when we are contemplating what the next research project would be, we can pick up a phone and talk to you and get your expertise, come to the research somehow. So there is so much can be done. That's a long-term plan. I think what you were saying is yeah. We have to guarantee safety, but it's not. It's more Western countries.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for this very nice talk. So I haven't been doing any research on censorship. However, it's a problem that I've been thinking a lot. So just one question, it might be very naive. So the way I'm thinking of censorship is like, we have two parties, A and B, and they are sending messages. It would be great if we can make sure 100% that the government cannot see what we are sending on specific issues, right? So if we could possibly have, a cryptographic scheme, let's say, that when you encrypt something, it can have two states, which means that if I see the message and I can decrypt it, I will only see that the decrypted message says, I love this government, but when you see the same message, you will see something totally different, like, okay, this government is corrupt, for example. Would that be a possible solution if we could have such a scheme?
Well, there are a lot.
With any limitations that we could have, very short messages or whatever. Yeah.
No, so I do want you to go to censorbeep.nimity.ch, where there are so many of the cover channels that have been proposed and discussed, including how we can hijack gaming channels to be able to send, or mimic different type of traffics to be able to evade the censor. So we have a lot of techniques have been proposed to be able to evade the censor that way. But the problem, there's no problem there. It's like we need more of them. Remember, there is a practical side that is there, which is we have to think about these covert channels be usable for the users around the world. They end up reaching those techniques being deployed in the current circumvention tool, let's say, get to the user to use them and be efficient and sustainable enough that actually reach the needs of those users. And I think from brainstorming about what techniques we can come up with to actually getting it there are a lot of steps and a lot of opportunity for doing practical research. And I think I would say that there are many ideas. We need more, but we need also more thinking of evaluating them with having the new evolving sensors capabilities in mind and the load we are asking users in those regions to do. The reason why I emphasize on bootstrapping is that when a tool breaks down, users don't know what to do except that find the next circumvention tool that is handed to them by their friends and go down the list of tools that they can have. And often the trust also diminishes as it goes. So yeah, a lot of opportunity for this community to get engaged.
Right, so the solution that we are seeing is towards that direction, but the main issue is the practicality at the moment, right?
Yes, a practicality and more forces. Like, for example, let me tell you this. We have a big session. To all honesty, pets community has been so welcoming. So hands down to you guys. But I would say that if we need more academics to be getting engaged in bringing the research to practice, because I've seen a lot of trends toward delegating that part to the civil society, to others to do. But there is no others. Civil society has a lot of problems in their hands, and the last thing they can is reading your research paper to understand what you were trying to say in those papers and you're marketing them for reviewers. So we have to do that, and in academia, we have to open our acceptance of such efforts as novel endeavors, and that would give a lot of incentivization for our researchers to go the one last mile.
Sophie, thank you for the talk. So just wanted to understand, you presented results primarily from some of the countries that are sort of opposed to the American democratic principles. But I'm also wondering if you have done any studies about the US government's role in itself in creating some of these censorships or sort of hiding their own news in other places. For example, from Vietnam to Nicaragua to many more recent mishaps that our own governments play a big role in, and overthrowing democratic governments for their own benefits. And so how your studies have actually looked at the Western democratic governments and how their principles are also sort of standing in the way of censorships and in some way presenting their view as the only global view without any sort of conflicting or sort of views that could potentially be true as well.
If you let me, I would say that I pointed a little bit about regulations and international policies that can affect, as like pointing at what can go have a harmful effect on and unintended consequences on internet freedom. But one thing I can highlight there is that, look, these network devices that are participating in censorship are dual-use technologies, and some of them are being built by Western countries, and being then shipped and deployed in other regions. And or another type of, another type of actors that we need to study more is, for example, when companies colluding with this authoritarian governments or soon-to-be authoritarian governments in taking down contents, removing especially dissident and activists from their services and their networks. The excuse that often these companies are bringing up is following local laws of these countries, and they don't have a chance because sometimes the safety of their company employees in those countries are in danger, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to all get together. Western countries, Western governments can play a bigger role also to help protect these companies to be able to stand strong against this kind of requests coming from these governments. And we see a good example of that just in the past couple of weeks. I think Russian governments were filing to take down some of these circumvention tools from Mozilla. And Mozilla took some days and then came back and said, nope, we don't see any different. We're not going to take down. That was the first time, one of the first time I was very proud because I saw them standing. But that's now Russia. Russia doesn't have reputation. Like years ago, Twitter just take down everything. So there are a lot of these kind of practices and violations by different players in the internet ecosystem. And all of them needs more data-driven studies to bring transparency and accountability to them. And I think that's why I was saying that if you go to that researcher, you'll find so many research problems that are so satisfying because you can, as a researcher, write something that then journalists read, and then with your help, they can actually go to courts and take an action and revert these harmful practices.
Let's end on this profound note and thank our amazing speaker.
Thank you.